I believe it's one of the most complete platforms I use for MVPs in everyday kind of life. And what I mean by that is I can create forms, and then it has a lot of native integrations automatically.
NoCodeList.
Greetings, net denizens. This is Cody Blair with NoCodeList.co, where we bring you the latest and greatest gurus in the no-code space to give you tips, tricks, and techniques to help you do your best and put forward your best foot in the no-code space, building your own apps and businesses. The guru that we have with us today is none other than Doc Williams. Doc, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, we're excited to have you as well. So Doc, just in case people don't know you, they don't know that you're the founder of Brand Factory. They haven't seen the Doc Williams YouTube channel, which I find hard to believe if they're in the no code space. Just in case they don't know that, give us 30 seconds about what it is that you do and who you are.
Yeah. So basically I help brands scale their operations using no code tools. And that's pretty much what I do. And everything else I can fill in from, I like to tinker, I'm a builder, all of those things. And we were talking about beforehand, there's just a lot of wacky things I've done before. We didn't talk about before. I also opened briefly a record label. So okay. A lot of bad decisions in my life.
So that actually brings me to one of my central questions. I love to watch interviews with people, and sometimes it sounds like this person is the world's greatest expert, and you watch them and you end up just kind of hanging your head in shame, like I've accomplished nothing, I've done nothing in my life. So I like to ask people, what is something you absolutely flubbed in your life? It doesn't have to be business related, just somewhere where you did a complete face plant.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a couple. So
where do I start?
Yeah, so I think one was I had a gym for a number of years. In hindsight, it was a bad decision. At the time, I was like, "Oh, this is going to be fantastic." So CrossFit gym, and it was the biggest parkour gym on the East Coast of the US. So I was like, oh, we're going to kill it. We're going to do all this stuff. And it was terrible. It was just terrible. And it was a mixture. These things happen. I mean, it was a mixture of just, it was not me. It was not me. I love exercising. I love working out. Just the execution and the structure of what we were trying to do. Yeah. It was a bad idea.
Hey man, you gotta fail forward, right?
Yeah.
Fail often and well, learn from your mistakes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that was, go ahead. Yeah.
No, well, what are you doing to keep fit now?
So basically I do everything that I used to have my gym for. So I mainly still do CrossFit, but now it's kind of a mixture of a couple different things. So I still weightlift. So I used to weightlift, Olympic weightlifting. I used to do a lot with kettlebell sport. Now I just got a set of Indian bells. I'm really big into Indian bells, and I'm getting an iron mace next month. And that's pretty much all I do. I go out into the backyard. We have I have a platform right there, work out, do some stuff with Indian bells, and then I just run stuff like that.
Very good, man. I'm getting to the stage in my life where I got to be careful about what I do. We don't want to do anything too new without working into it slowly, because that's a guaranteed way to get interested. Lately, we're moving, and we're moving out to the country not too far away, and it is 101 degrees every day and like 60% humidity. So I'm getting my workout every day, but it's real world movements for sure.
That's all you need. That's all you need.
All right. Well, tell me about maybe some of your guilty pleasures.
Guilty pleasures. That kind of depends. I would say I was thinking about two things. Number one, so I was a very, very fat child. Very fat child. Like a lot of people are like, oh, this. So I cannot eat like potato chips or any kind of snack. Like that's my vice. Like any kind of thing. Like people are like, oh, just have one cupcake. No, I'm gonna eat all the cupcakes. Like that's why I try to, like, people like, oh, just have one. No, I was like, I'll just knock out. I don't care all those
going things. For the gold, man.
Yeah. And so I would say probably that. One thing that I enjoy, just it's not, my wife is like, this is ridiculous. I love tracking what the Kardashians are doing, but there's a reason why. Because my wife is always convinced, she's like, they're so stupid, all this stuff. I'm like, you don't understand how rich and how smart they are. And so I am always tracking how much they're making, what businesses and everything, because I find it so funny where people are like, oh, they don't have a brain cell. And I'm like, do you know how much money they're making
They're
off
doing
of you
something
hating
right.
them?
That's right.
The,
That's right.
you
Any
know, they,
publicity is good publicity, right?
yeah, was it Kylie has the #1 Shopify store? That was a couple years ago, but she's pretty still top 5 easy. With like what, 4 part-time employees? I have the whole article. I gotta check it again. But basically, it's the way that they do it is incredible. So I would say gossip. I would say gossip and NBA drama would be my guilty pleasure if I'm looking
Very
at that.
nice.
No.
Very nice. Get your head out of work and into another space. And yeah, there's a lot of drama and fun going on there for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So speaking a little bit more about your workspace, how did you get into no code?
Actually, I guess it kind of started from the gym. It started from the gym
Really?
because I needed to figure out how to do, like, this was like 2011, something like that, when I was trying to figure out how to do landing pages, how to do sequencing and automation. And one of my friends was like, hey, do you know this guy, Noah Kagan? He's got this thing. I don't know, it's called Sumo Me or something. And I was like, no, I don't know. He's like, and I couldn't afford Infusionsoft or anything. Remember, HubSpot at the time was only doing like business plans. So it was way out of, I wasn't going to spend that money. So I started buying lifetime deals. I started buying LTDs from AppSumo back in the day, and just start Frankensteining stuff together. So I did that for my business. And so, yeah, I mean, and if people want to see, like, AppSumo used to have some crazy deals. Zapier first came out with a lifetime deal at AppSumo. A lot of crazy companies started. BuildFire was there. There was a lot of tools.
Yeah.
Dropbox was there. So I kind of just bought a lot of things and experimented with it for my business, started doing that for the gym. And then the time when I was trying to think about how to still be involved in the sports world or fitness online, I was like, I started using all the same tools, and yeah, that's how it happened.
Fantastic. Well, just want to remind all our viewers out there, if you like this video, go ahead and like this video, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. That way, when we come out with new videos and podcasts, you will be the first to know. So, Doc, let's see here. What are some no-code tools? You'd mentioned AppSumo or Sumo Me, I mean, but what are some other no-code tools that you really love, that you use a lot?
That's interesting. So it depends on what I'm trying to do. And yeah, I think it depends on that. So it would start with everyday kind of things.
Sure.
I usually use Paperform the most. And the reason I think Paperform isn't really, people don't see it in the no-code space a lot, but I believe it's one of the most complete platforms I use for MVPs in everyday kind of life. And what I mean by that is I can create forms, and then it has a lot of native integrations automatically. I can automatically, add a row to a Google Sheet or something like that. I do pretty much all my onboarding with clients and students with Paperform. So that's pretty big. So Paperform is something I use for MVPs really quickly. Probably Softer.
Okay.
Those are probably my go-to. And then I'm like, okay, so technically what is a no-code tool? What is not and what's not? Because if I'm like, okay, so some people, I never considered Podia as a no-code tool, and people are like, that's no-code. I'm like, is that no-code now? I was like, I thought that was an LMS, but okay, whatever. Let's do that. So if I'm going to use, if we're allowing Podia to be in the conversation, Podia is pretty much how I connect everything else. ConvertKit is like my central nervous system. I have everything filter into that. And the reason I have, and maybe I'm paranoid, the reason I have a CRM, a customer relationship management system, and then I have an LMS, a learning management system. I have 2 different ones, because if I want to leave, I don't want to be tethered and feel like I have to rethink my life. And so that's why I always keep my CRM separate than my LMS, and then have them talk to each other. And then whatever I'm usually building on top of it, either, like I said, paper form, what else? Market Plan I use, but Market Plan is more of a planning tool to look at my funnels, to drop UTM trackers, things like that. Yeah, I think those would be my main ones right now.
Okay. Are there any that just maybe you personally don't have that much occasion to use them, but you go, I wish I had a need for this. I love this idea.
Yeah, Canonic. That's probably, I talk about them all the time. I'm not sponsored by them, but Canonic is more of like a low code, no code tool. So it allows you to build backends really quickly. So say, for instance, people are like, hey, I want to build this database and I want things to connect. Once you build out in Canonic, not only does it structure how people can enter, like, things in a database, or you can pull information and put it in Canonic, but it also does endpoints. It writes out all of your endpoints and everything like that, and API documentation. So after you write it, it's done. And I can rinse and repeat. I can send someone else the documentation. I can use the documentation. It was on my top 5 from last year, like breakout platforms. Wow. They haven't figured out the marketing to tell people how great they are yet, but Canonic is probably like, it's wonderful. It's the chef kiss. Mwah. But I don't use it enough. And most of the things I build, like, I mean, we can go into this later if you want, but a lot of times now that I know what I want to do in no code, it's given me the time and structure where now I just work with devs, so I can build out what I want. And then I'm like, okay, I need you to build this with code now. I need you to scale this thing. So for me, Canonic, I'm just not really there. I will say, like, in an envious way, but I have no desire at all. A lot of the guys that started no code about 2 years ago, that hated Bubble because the learning curve was too steep. All of them are all Bubble users. And I could go on a rant about why I love and hate Bubble, but they are all Bubble enthusiasts, and they can only do things in Bubble. And like every month I'm like, nope, not doing it. And then I just shut my account and I'm like, not doing it today. I'm not doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. So you mentioned that Canonic is just having a hard time telling everybody how great they are. And that seems to be a definite normal problem for new app developers, new tool developers, etc. You also are the founder of Brand Factory. What can you recommend in that regard? How should people get the word out?
I think it's easier said than done. It's always like, yeah, why don't you just find the right messaging? Like, why aren't you not doing this? I think it's 2 things. Number one, it's having a real perspective of like what you want your brand to do.
Sure.
And also 2, you've got to disconnect yourself, your personality, to your brand. Okay. I find a lot of people are like, this is me, this is what I want my brand to stand for, or this is how I want to connect with people. And I'm like, maybe that's not how it's going to work, though. Maybe that's not how it's going to be the best example. I'll show you 2 really good examples, I think, like that will illustrate this. Okay. There's a company called BuddyBase. And BuddyBase is a great platform that allows you to basically use like SQL and other databases, and you can visually represent what's from the database. I know that's very simplistic. There's a lot of things that BuddyBase can do, but that's like the main thing. BuddyBase originally went about 2 years ago. They were really trying to hit no code really hard and hit the space. But the people that use SQL and use these databases usually aren't no code first. What I mean by that is it's usually developers that know MySQL and do all of these things. And when they pivoted to low code, or for developers to speed up their development to use BuddyBase, totally changed. Now they also changed the format, how they use GitHub and things like that, but they went after a different audience. They pivoted and found the people that love them. Those are the things. For marketing anything, especially no code, I think it's aligning and finding your right tribe and listening. If you're hitting like a dead end and people are not adopting, there is something wrong. And it's okay to pivot. There was a guy, I can't remember his name, but he started a startup. He's done quite a few, but I believe the startup was called Breather. And
Okay.
Breather was a startup where you basically could rent basically time. If you're in LA or New York, you're in between places, your hotel's not open, your Airbnb, you could just rent a room for like 2 or 3 hours and just focus. The point is, he did this one quote where he was saying, if you're not the first person in the parade, if you're not the conductor, get out of the parade and start your own. And what I mean by that is, I think a lot of people just have to really lean into their own personality, lean into that brand, and just go with it and really start trying to find that tribe and that community. That community will then galvanize everyone else. I think of one of the best examples in no code, probably Notion. The Notioneers are just insane people.
Mm-hmm.
Bubble developers are another breed of their own. and probably like Glide. Those are probably the best ones that have this ridiculous fan base. Bubble is probably the most known for no code, but Notioneers, and it's because it allows them to share. They have their own style. And I always tell people, look at the difference between Notioneers and people that love Coda. Totally different personality, totally different. And they're leaning in. Notion leans in on that kind of persona.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Yeah, nice. So are there any I don't know. Are there any other gurus out there or books out there? And it could have nothing whatsoever to do with no code. It might be just business or philosophy even. Is there
Yeah.
something that really inspires you or gives you a lot of good ideas?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a couple. Well, I would go with just looking at different books. So, okay, number one, Queen Elizabeth, CEO, Queen Elizabeth, the first CEO. That's a crazy book. It basically shows how Queen Elizabeth ran England like a startup.
Really?
And I love that book. And I found it
Sounds
randomly at a used bookstore. That'd be weird if it was a used car dealership. What else did I like? I like Shoe Dog. That was a really cool book. Creativity Inc., which is how they built Pixar and talking about how they did that.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Be Our Guest. It's from the Disney Institute.
Yeah.
I also I was reading a lot of, what's his name? Isaacson. So I was reading Stephen Isaacson, what he did, Steve Jobs, but he did Da Vinci, Leonardo da Vinci. He did that one. Albert Einstein. Those were really good. So I think just those kind of books I enjoy.
Nice.
And the other one too, it's an old book series that I took from my dad. It was How Things Work. It's like an encyclopedia kind of thing.
Yes.
And it just breaks down like how everything works. I love that.
Those
love
are
it.
fascinating books. I really enjoy those myself. I tell you, some interesting resources that you wouldn't think might be good resources. Have you ever heard of the Foxfire series of books?
No, gotta write that down.
My wife and actually mother-in-law got me the entire collection of like 20 Foxfire books. So back in I want to say it was the 60s, this guy was a teacher in rural West Virginia, and he was an English teacher, and he was having such a hard time getting his kids interested in what they were doing. So he launched basically a school magazine, a class magazine. And the premise was, you go talk to your grandparents and figure out, what they know that you don't, and then let's document it and put it together. So it's this entire book full of like, here's how you cook possum, here's how you scald a hog, here's how you make a shoehorn or a saddle or whatever. It's just crazy, just what everybody was kind of 100 years ago was doing for themselves pretty much. Just gives you a whole insight into this. Yeah, it's a can-do attitude. It's you figure it out as you go along, and then best practices come out of that as you're working on it.
I love it. I just looked it up. I got to do more research on this. This is the first time I've ever heard of it.
Yeah, it's I'm kind of geeky that way anyway, but I found it really fascinating. Another one that I've been reading lately is Anti-Fragile by Nicholas Nassim Taleb. That is a fascinating book too. And I don't know how to classify it. It's part business, part philosophy, part diatribe, part comedy. The guy is just brilliant, and he comes out of a Wall Street trading background. His main point is that there's not a word for what is really important sometimes in our economy, which is anti-fragility. So fragile is when something would get broken if there's too much stress, right? You send a box of wine glasses cross country, you got to box it up really carefully. You got to write fragile really big on the side. If it comes across any stress, that's a bad thing. It's going to break. It's going to get worse. And so his question is, well, what's the opposite of fragile? And most people say, well, something like a crowbar or something. You can ship a crowbar across country. It can handle all sorts of stress and it's not going to get hurt at all. And he points out that's not actually the opposite of fragile. The opposite of fragile is anti-fragile. He coined the word, which means it actually gets stronger when it's stressed out. So your muscles, Mr. Exercise Guy, your muscles are anti-fragile. If you stress them in the right way, that's the idea behind hormesis and stuff, it actually gets stronger. And so he goes through in this book and applies that concept to evolution, to business, to politics. It's just a brilliant tour de force. And I mean, I'm just writing ideas that I'm spinning off of this as I'm reading it the whole time. So that's a good one too.
I love it. Oh, yeah. I'm adding all this stuff to my Amazon list right now. I'm not joking.
All right, man. I'm one of those people that'll give you like 5 new books to read every time I talk to somebody. And I like that. So I've written down the ones you were telling me about as well. So. Oh,
okay. I got 2 more. Two more.
Please.
I was like, okay, now I got to open up.
All right.
So I open up Audible. How to tell a story. Now, this might seem weird, but really, if you want to do anything in marketing or business, you have to do that. And I'm not sure if you've ever listened to like the Moth Radio Hour on NPR or anything like that. So it's 10-minute stories. It's 10-minute stories without using notes, and you're just telling one story. And they are just fantastic. They are fantastic. And listen, some of them are so emotional, like you'll start crying. My wife, I have no shame. Listen, when I walk around, like people just might think I'm crazy. When I'm walking and have my sunglasses and just tears are dry, but I don't care. They are great. But how to tell a story structures how you're going to be able to resonate with people, how you're going to actually tell them from getting them to point A to point B. And if you can understand how to tell a story, your marketing will always be on point. You'll find your right audience, and you'll be able to make an impact with your brand and with your storytelling. And I think it works for teaching you how to be better on YouTube, to how you're going to be pitching if you ever want to do any kind of VC or anything like that. And then also too, just connecting with your audience if you're getting testimonials for your product or your service or anything like that. It's a great book.
Who's the author?
The author it will say how to tell a story. It will say by the Moth, and then it will be all the people that are contributing from it, because it will be different stories, because they actually do excerpts. And I would actually say the Audible version, or just getting it so you can listen to the audio. Okay. I love it because it will take excerpts from the story, so you can actually hear their voices. And I was like, I could not imagine trying to just read this. It is a very, very good audio experience. That was that one. Oh, this is my last one. Last one. I know. Just make sure we won't go over time. This is very random. And I've got to find it. Hold on. I've got it right here. Hold on. So when people watching this and everything, don't worry. Sorry. I was messing with my camera because I'm going to be going out and doing all this new. So you see the aperture changer because it's on auto. So forgive me. I know it's not the greatest. Doing that a
couple of videos ago. I had the same thing.
Yeah. So this one is the salesman data book. If you've ever seen
let's put it up there one more time.
Let me do that. You'll see that.
The salesman data book.
Yeah. And what's crazy about that? Let me switch it back. I don't look that bad. So this is from the 1920s and 30s. And the reason I came across these books were me and my videographer, because we share an office, we moved into this really old furniture factory. And they had all of these old salesman books from the 1920s and 30s just there. And it's these miniature ones, and it would tell you, this is like, which one is this? This is from 1928, and it will tell you how to be more effective selling for 1928.
Come on.
And
That sounds fascinating.
I love it. And so it's talking about time management, how to structure, how you go door to door, an early start for a full day. Like, it's just all of these things. And then let me show you this one. This is my favorite. Like, you'll see it. Let me put it back again. Like, you see how it structures like a workflow, how you make a sale.
I love
how you
it.
make a sale. And it's hilarious because it's 100 years almost, and it's all the same fundamentals. And it's just, I feel like a lot of these things, they weren't bloating it to make a long book. They're just like, this is what you need to do. And I've just been reading them.
Come on.
It's fascinating.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah,
All right. I am going to definitely check that out. And by the way, free meat space tip for those of you who are bargain book hunters, like apparently we both are. If you go to the dollar, like they're trying to give these books away, that's where you will always find the best books. I can always find one on the dollar bargain rack, even though I've spent 2 hours inside the bookstore itself.
Yep.
So all right, cool. All right, let's see. Back to this. What kind of no-code app do you really wish somebody would invent? Maybe thinking of putting one of these together yourself because you really need it.
That is so good. So good. I mean, do you want me to tell you like what I'm building right now? And
sure, that'd be great.
Like, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I mean, people can try to. This is what it is. I don't have a problem with people like, oh, it's got to be secretive. This is the thing. When you're trying to run a business, and there's a couple of things I haven't seen done very easily and lightweight. Number one, easily seeing your profit and loss statements throughout your business and being able to plug it in. I haven't seen a no-code tool that will do it. Barometrics does it, but it's very expensive, these kind of things. Number one, churn rate. Seeing your churn rate of your membership. Now, even if you go without Seta, MemberStack, they don't show you your churn rate based on membership. And so what I'm building is a no-code tool where you're plugging in from a CSV file, and it shows you your churn rate based on your membership.
Nice.
And because even if you pull out your Stripe, if you do your CSV and you download it, they don't show you your points of where you churn, why it's churning. And I find for myself, and when I'm consulting with others, that's the biggest thing. I'm like, okay, so what does your onboarding look like? Oh, when do they churn? Well, how long do they last? A year, 6 months, 3 months? Why are they not doing it? And a lot of times it's like, well, I've got this many members. I gained this many members this month. I did it. I'm like, no, just give me the points. And it's always a huge production trying to getting your numbers from all these third-party platforms, and then they're trying to put it into a spreadsheet. So that's what I'm building.
Nice. What are you using to build it?
So the first one I'm doing is, my MVP, very, very simple, paper form and in Google Sheets with formulas in Google Sheets.
Nice.
And that's pretty much all the heavy lifting. Version 2, that's when I was like, hey, once I have all this, just getting a dev, and they're doing it with Ruby on Rails.
Very good. All right. Thanks for sharing about that. Thanks for
in software. No worries.
Yeah.
It's going to in software on top of it.
All right. Can't wait to see that. It sounds like something I would benefit from. So let me know when you got that. I'll keep my eye on your channel, and I'll find that when it comes out. So I'll check that out. So tell me a little bit about Brand Factory and kind of who you help and how you get clients and that kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's changed over the years. Changed over the years. So right now it's brands that already have a product or service, and they are frustrated because they don't know how to scale.
Okay.
Either they're stuck because they're a one-person show and they feel like they hit their limit. They have no more capacity. That's who I love working with. And the reason I say they have to have a product or service, because you've already validated, there's always something that the market loves. Now we need to scale it and streamline this bad boy to be able to either release other products or to make this optimized for yourself and for your clients or customers.
Sure.
So that's the main thing that I do with Brand Factory. I do some startup consulting if it's a brand that, like, if you want me to go into this, that like me and my videographer, we have this knack, and I can tell you, I've always had this knack. I can tell you what's going to pop. Like I can tell you when there's an influencer. I'm like, oh, they're going to be big in 2 years. No joke. I have all these interviews. They only have 2,000. Now they have 4.5 million. Like I can spot them. I can spot
right
because
That's
it's a
good.
mixture of charisma and like, I'm like, they've got something. They're raw, but they've got something.
Okay.
And so sometimes if I'm doing consulting, if someone asks me like, hey, can you help me? It depends. A lot of times I'll either just give them pointers. I'm like, hey, just do this, come back. If they're serious and they're like, we want like, I need you to really like mentor. If it's the right fit, and if it's a startup or if it's an influencer, I'll just either invest and then I'll take a piece of the company or the brand or something like that.
Nice.
And I'll just run it that way. But it's few and far between, but there's some that I'm just like, this is a no-brainer. You just need these things. Like let's do it. Like, so it'll just work. But
yeah.
Those are the two.
So how do people get in contact with you? How do they find out more about what you do?
Yeah. You just go to brandfactoryinc.com. And there's a form. You can either sign up for group coaching or tell me what's going on with you. And then we have that. Mainly I do more group coaching. I barely do any one-on-one anymore.
Okay.
And then if they have a great idea, I always love hearing great ideas.
Yeah, for sure.
Just hit me up on Twitter _Doc Williams and find me there. Or, I mean, I'm always on YouTube. So go to youtube.com/Doc Williams. I can't believe no one took that before me. But hit me up. I answer every single comment. So if you're like, hey, just get back to me, I'll message you back.
Nice. All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell us about, and you've already actually mentioned some of this. You've already covered quite a bit of ground here, but are there some common challenges that your customers, this is a normal thing they hit? You talked about churn rate. What are some other things that are common challenges?
Yeah, let's think about this. Common challenge, I would say, is just launching. I know that sounds so like basic, but a lot of times when people are just trying to figure out when they just launching their MVP, a lot of times people will hold off and they're like, it's not perfect. I can't do it yet. And it's just coaching them to say like, it's good enough. Just launch it. Just see what happens. See what the market says, and then we can come back. I think it's more of coaching emotion than anything technical.
Come on.
That's the thing.
Yeah, I've been getting that message from several different sources lately. So it's interesting that you say that, but that idea of good enough, because I mean, I'm one of those people. I want it like all perfect and everything before I launch it. And I can think of 13 different reasons why I should wait till next week. But sometimes the best thing is just get it out there and then iterate and pivot, like you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Very good. All right. So what in the no code world is keeping you up at night right now? What are you really looking forward to seeing in the future?
That kind of depends. I was thinking about that. Keeping me up at night. There's two things. The reason I say that is, I don't see anything in the no code space that's keeping me up at night, because I utilize no code to solve other problems in other categories. I used to really be focused like, man, I wish this was in no code. I wish this, But then when I was just in building mode, there was no direct application of what I was wishing to happen. So I spent way too much time on product hunt. Like, man, if this dropped, like I could have done, and it's like, find something else and then like bring it in. I mean, that's just me. I feel that I use no code to make money and to make my life easier. I wouldn't say, I know there's so many other better builders in no code than me, and they love building. And they want certain things like a plugin in Bubble, all of these things. And I'm like, to me right now, I'm just like, when it's here, it's here. I don't look at it. Oh, and this other thing too, I have this thing. I go to my nieces and nephews, and then I ask them how would they solve it. and they got some crazy things, but a lot of
How old are
times
your nieces and nephews, by the way?
so they range. They
Okay.
range. So one is 6, one is 8, and
Uh-huh.
they're just wild. They're just
Uh-huh.
wild. And then I have one that's like a teenager, like a preteen. They're like 12. The 12-year-old is very, I think that I guess I should be paying him, um, but I pretty much just ask him to solve things. I don't give him any context, and he just like goes at it. And I'm like, okay, oh, I didn't think about solving that. I just go and use
Yeah.
what he says.
Yeah, I
So
get the brilliance of the novice in there. They don't know what they shouldn't say yet. So
yeah, yeah.
very
So
good.
that's mainly what I do. I'll use like common apps right now. I'll give him something. I'm like, how would I do this? And and just tells me, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And
Yeah.
then that's, but that's just me. I I I could say I hear a lot of people in no code that they'll say very specific things, but I think that's, from my perspective, if I'm a builder and that's what I want, I'm like, that makes sense. But even like Web3, where people are like, oh man, if that came into no code, great. Guess what? There's third web. There's all this stuff. Has anything really changed in 8 months? Like, yeah, you were so high on that you needed something to do an NFT collection. You still don't have an audience. You still aren't doing all these other things. It doesn't matter.
Sure.
Like,
Sure.
so that's just
Yeah.
my perspective. That's just mine.
Yeah. Beautiful. Doc Williams, thank you so much for giving us your time and energy and insights today. It's really been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
All right. No Code citizens, if I would love it if you would like or subscribe right now, and just make sure that you get these videos in your inbox when we come out with a new one. Thank you for joining us today. Again, Doc Williams, thank you very much. Signing off for NoCodeList.co. This is Cody Blair. No Code List.